Elias was bound hand and foot to a cross. He was one of the Christians living in Raqqa, Syria, when it was seized by the extremist group known as Daesh or ISIS. The extremists seized him after he could not pay the Islamic jizya tax that Daesh imposed on the city's Christians. He remained tied to the cross in solitary confinement for a month. And then things got worse. Daesh told him that his throat would be slit. A bomb blast devastated the complex where he was held. Elias was able to escape and, finding his wife, fled with her to Aleppo. In Aleppo they were cared for by Aid to the Church in Need's project partners in the city. Elias is just one of the many Christians around the world who are suffering because of their faith. Christians whose stories have been uncovered by ACN's on-the-ground research for its Persecuted and Forgotten report, which has been backed up by other research. Persecuted and Forgotten examines the oppression of Christians between mid-2015 and mid-2017, focusing on 13 countries which are essential for any understanding of the trends in Christian persecution today. ACN's research revealed evidence of the most serious persecution against Christians in terms of violations of fundamental human rights, including violence, rape, unlawful detention, unfair trial, and prevention of religious assembly. In terms of the numbers of people involved, the gravity of the crimes committed and their impact, it is clear that the persecution of Christians today is worse than at any time in history. Not only are Christians more persecuted than any other faith group, but ever-increasing numbers are experiencing the very worst forms of persecution. In Syria and Iraq, we have seen an exodus of Christians from the region. The exodus is associated not only with conflict, but with the action of extremist groups. In Iraq, Daesh's plan to erase all evidence of the Christian presence was made plain. They desecrated or removed crosses and other symbols on church buildings. They defaced icons. They burned down churches and Christian homes, and they subjected Christians to denigrating treatment. One Christian woman described how the extremists took her and her baby to an internment camp where she was repeatedly raped. Elderly Christian woman Zaretha was one of the few Christians who remained in Karakosh when it was seized by Daesh. She remained there to nurse her dying husband. When Daesh's extremists raided her house, they found a crucifix and forced her to spit on the cross. And Daesh's campaign spread to Egypt, where a church which had already suffered ongoing persecution has now faced mass killings on repeated occasions. Such problems have also been seen in parts of Africa. For example, in Nigeria, where Boko Haram's war on Christians has seen 1.8 million people displaced, more than 200 churches and chapels damaged, and its murderous campaign has left 15,000 children as orphans. But the Middle East and Africa are not alone in suffering persecution, nor is the problem confined to radical Islamism. In India, the rise to power of the right-wing BJP has made radical groups feel that they are free to attack Christians and other non-Hindu groups. From January to May 2017, there were 316 attacks on Christians, almost as many as were recorded for the whole of 2016. In Pakistan, Christians living under the threat of the controversial blasphemy laws have been raped, murdered, and the target of extremist bombings. In totalitarian regimes China and North Korea, intolerance has risen as Christianity is perceived as a foreign influence that could undermine communism. The pulling down of crosses from churches in China is just the tip of the iceberg, and churches are experiencing a renewed crackdown on church leaders considered dissidents by the regime. But there are signs of hope. In many of these countries, Aid to the Church in Need has only been able to gain access to such sensitive information as it is already working alongside local churches, providing essential help and assistance. In Iraq, ACN is helping churches to rebuild Christian settlements that have been destroyed. It is helping Christians resume their lives in Iraq. As ACN's founder, Father Werenfrid, said, "We are helping to dry the tears of the abandoned Jesus on the crosses of this century."